Okay, just listen. Just listen to this. See if I can get it. It'll play for me at very significant moments, but I asked for it to come in this morning because I wanted to bring it through. Hang on, I want to bring it in higher. And it'll just keep going on and on and on like that.
That's beautiful.
Now there's that, and then there's this. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I've heard of once in a lullaby.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the difference between the two?
There's a million differences.
Uh-huh. But what's a specific difference between the two?
The melody.
Okay, the melody. I know you're thinking technically. The difference that I'm coming from with the two is that the first one I'm channeling. It's coming from within.
Mm-hmm.
The second one I learned repetitively from the moment I was pretty much born, as it was played on every television at every Easter time from like 1970 in syndication until pretty much currently. Anybody, I mean, pretty much the entire world knows that song. You have to like not be tuned into any pop culture in any country at all not to know Over the Rainbow. A lot of people don't even know who actually sang it first anymore. They think of now the Hawaiian singer who did his own little uke variation of it, and then he's crossed. But that's a song that I was taught. I heard it. I really liked it, but I never thought anything of it significant except for when I got to New York when I was 18 and I was going to AMDA, the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, and they were like, you got to pick a ballad to learn so you can sing it in auditions, and everybody thought that Over the Rainbow was a perfect fit for my personality. And it just turns out that Judy Garland, who was the famous movie star in the early 20th century, she was also a Gemini. And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. I actually knew that at the time, that she was a Gemini, because astrology had just come into my world. So, but a million different people, maybe a billion different people have done variations on it. Actually, one of my favorite renditions of it, favorite covers of it, is Eva Cassidy.
Oh.
And hers.
Oh, I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somewhere over the rainbow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she made it like really melancholy. Hers is really sad. She does the I think for me, it's just the favorite cover of it. But there's that, and then there's what I channeled. Now, my mind will call the da 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 da, which doesn't have an end. It continues. It's a continuous frequency. It came to me from a group of beings that my mind labels as an angelic frequency, an angelic feeling. It came to me many, many years ago. The angelics come through, and, you know, that's the human word for them, the angelics. That may not be what they call themselves. They came through, every single time they come through with their language, which I call light language, and many people call light language, only through like melody and harmony. They come in through a continuous frequency instead of a staccato frequency. And we've been talking about lately, you and I have, about coming from within, going from within, as opposed to taking everything from without as your truth. And I have been getting messages from people who are actually potential clients on how they've never heard of QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique, which is totally understandable. I mean, it's not really mainstream. And yep, there are people who are in the mainstream who have heard of it. Dolores Cannon's work of past life regression. And these people who are messaging me, they're sharing with me that their spirituality is based on mainstream spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle and, some people go to Abraham Hicks, although from my experience with Abraham Hicks, I wouldn't say they are exactly authentic. But when we're talking about the difference between finding your path within and being genuinely authentic with yourself, we find that there's still that focus on my life, my spirituality, my perception, my music, my dance is based upon the external, what others present to me, and therefore I base what I'm going to be inspired by from that. That was my problem when I dabbled in being a choreographer in my 20s. I was used to being a really good puppet as a dancer for all these other choreographers. They would throw anything at me and I could copy it and almost look exactly like them. And it was a lot of fun to do that. It's something that I had practiced being the youngest child of 3 from the time I was born, learning what my brother and sister had thrown at me and just copying them and being just like them, but it wasn't genuinely authentic for me. So when I was trying to choreograph, and I was actually hired as a choreographer a couple of times, I didn't do very good choreography, and they didn't use my work because it wasn't coming authentically through me. And I would try to make it. I would, take everything that I had learned and so go, I just have to put that to the side. I know this is within me. I know that I'm able to choreograph, and I really couldn't. I could come up with a couple of short pieces, but I couldn't come up with anything that was really substantial. So instead, I found myself as a dancer always copying what it is that I saw and trying to make it my own. Now, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that if you want to do that. But when we're talking about being authentically genuine, being authentic to yourself and what's coming from within, that takes a level of practice. That takes a level of daily meditation, takes a level of quieting the mind, being in the moment, and trusting the creative flow that runs through all of us to be able to tap into that. And only when I really fully released my training, which I will call programming because it is programming, the training that I had for Broadway, for Hollywood. Sonia, you don't look a certain way, so therefore we suggest you go get plastic surgery so that you can fit into this box that we are going to be able to market and make a bunch of money off of you. Sonia, if you're going to sing music, you need to sing music this way that's going to put you on Broadway and potentially nominate you for a Tony so we can make a bunch of money off of you. I find that consumerism gets in the way of genuine authenticity. And when you were talking in last week's episode about letting go of music, this is just my interpretation. It is about letting go of any attachment to what's already been put out there, about the external reflections of, well, this is what's making money. I feel like it's been a necessary step for you to release an old paradigm and to really start to focus on what is authentically coming from within you. And as I shared with you last week, and I share with you every time we have this conversation, I say to you, you don't have to be a musician. You are a musician. I don't have to be a performer. I am a performer. If somebody put on music, and I've not freestyled dance in a while. I don't know how long it's been. I think every once in a while I'll just kind of like in the kitchen go, wonder if I can still do a double pirouette. I can still do a double pirouette. I wonder if I can still, like the hip hop will still come out or the African moves. It's like, can I still do it? And then it's like, that's coming from the mind. Of course I can still do it because I am dance. I am the song. I am music. I don't have to label myself of I'm a performer. I'm a dancer. I'm a singer. You don't have to do any of that. And the transition I see that you're in right now is about everything becoming very internal with you, which is why I feel that you got prompted from source to get an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
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 How do you feel about that?
It's 100% accurate. It's very simply just, yeah, that's absolutely it. I mean, yeah.
Would you play some of this here?
Sure.
Because I want to hear it. I hear it from the other room, but I don't get to hear it when you're actually sitting there. And I have watched you on stage perform. I've watched you actually in most of your performances on stage. I think there's might have been like 2 or 3 that I've missed. I've watched you perform. I have listened to you play electric guitar. I still have the video performance of you playing Happy Birthday for me on your electric guitar.
Oh, yeah.
I think you were 17, 18 at the time.
I forgot that I did that.
You did that. And then you also, the first time you came and sat down in my space at the other apartment, you played that little Spanish thing. Do, 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 do. It was really cool.
Right. Yeah.
You did. You played that little Spanish rendition and you said, look what I just came up with. And that one, I don't know if you externally were inspired by that or if you like listened to a song and just tried to pick up the Spanish tune, or if that actually was something that was coming from within you.
I used to be so uncomfortable with the fact that I need to be prompted from the external.
Yeah.
I used to be so uncomfortable with that. I'm not really uncomfortable with that anymore.
Well, that's also because you've performed, and you've performed quite a bit.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, I would still be very uncomfortable. And actually, I would say up until very recently, I was very uncomfortable with the idea of like what even is original music for me? What does that even mean? I get inspired by other people, and I think
sure,
judging that inspiration has brought me nothing but sadness. It's brought me nothing but struggle as I sit and I struggle to come up with an original thought, come up with an original idea. Just wait, sit there and nothing comes. It's like, okay, well, because I'm not going from feeling then. I'm going from thought. Feeling to me is inspired by others. What others do inspires me. So when I'm around and I hear something and it makes me feel a way, like, I listen to Alejandro Aranda play his American Idol audition. I go, oh, that brings something in my gut, and it sits and then it rises and I have to bring it out, and then it comes out in my own way. That's how everything works.
I think that's wonderful. I don't agree with you that that's how everything works. I know that I'm tapping into a collective channel that nothing's original. But when I am channeling the language of light, that's not something that I'm looking at anybody else externally from. That's literally all coming from within me. And while I'm channeling the language of light, my left brain does come in and say, oh, you're just making all this up. I don't care. I just let my left brain come in and say, oh, you're making all this up. And I just let it come through. But I don't watch anybody else.
The judgment there is the difference. It's totally about the judgment. It's like, you cannot judge the collective flow of creation. Nothing is original. You're absolutely right, and that's exactly how life works. And when we are musicians, it's like when I am inspired by something that I hear from somebody else, it's not me sitting down and going, I love that feeling, I gotta bring that feeling out. There is no intention with that. It is simply a spontaneous happening that is based upon my own. Usually what happens actually is I even forget that that's even what inspired me. I'm not even thinking about that when I sit down. I sit down and I just have this feeling and I have this melody and it comes out. And then after the fact, I'm like, oh yeah, I can totally see where I brought parts of that and oh yeah, absolutely. Then the analysis comes in and it's like, oh, like I can totally pick that apart. These are useful parts of the brain. They're not to be discouraged and they're not to be judged and they're not to be looked at as being derivative or consumerist or anything like that, because that's not what it is. And also, is there anything bad about being derivative or consumerist? I don't think so at all. These are just aspects of life. I think part of being an artist is the freedom to just freely express no matter where it comes from. If you can stand behind your work, no matter what it is that you've done, you are a successful artist. And success is not about money, and it's not about making a name for yourself. It's about how comfortable are you with yourself. That's all that it is.
You're so funny.
This is a song that I've been working on singing and playing guitar at the same time, which is not easy for me, but I've been practicing this a bit and we'll see. The tide as it pulls me from shore, sinking slow. I don't know if I can take it anymore. I want to breathe color, to hear my heart sing. I want to breathe color, to feel the beauty in everything.
That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. You've been sharing your music with me your whole life. Mm-hmm. It's always been such a joy. It's so wonderful to see what kind of I planted within you in utero, singing all the time with all three of you, and then to see what any of you do with it and how you influence the world with your own music. It's really beautiful. Yeah. Now, how did that feel for you?
Nerve-wracking.
I know.
Yeah.
I could tell.
Very nervous. That's not something that ever goes away. That's something that comes out anytime you play something that's vulnerable, anytime that there's a vulnerability part of me, which is why it's really good for me to do it. And it's part of the reason why I got this guitar. It's part of just what I would like to do is I'd like to, get to a point where I have a few songs and then I just like to go out and perform them on the street for people.
Yep. Push yourself.
Exactly. I mean, like 2 weeks ago, I couldn't even play any of that and sing at the same time.
That's beautiful.
It's just every day I just play it a little bit.
You're just playing a little bit.
Yeah. And I just get better and better. And eventually it'll get to a point where it's really smooth. Every musician goes through this. I think a lot of people they see the end result. And they think
that's a great point. They
think, oh wow, this person is so talented. But no musician who actually is quote unquote talented, no musician that's really put a lot of like time and effort and work into their craft is ever going to claim that they're talented, because they don't believe it. Because it's not true. Talent doesn't exist. It's not about talent. It's about the amount of work that you put in and how passionate you are about it.
It's about the practice.
Yeah.
As a dancer, when I first got into actual structured dance classes, I mean, I was dancing just freestyle on my own from the time I could probably move. But I just realized that if I just knew, it was just intuitive, if I was going to be a really good tap dancer, because I wanted to be like Ginger Rogers in the movies. If I was going to be a really good tap dancer, I had to practice. And what you were talking about earlier, I took what Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers were doing in movies. I watched their tap and their dance, and I didn't copy them. I just got inspired by them. I was taught all of the steps when I was in all of my classes from the time I was, I don't know, 11 or 12. And I would just go home and practice them. I would just practice with my tap shoes in the basement on the tile floor. And I realized that I got quickly better at it. It was something I was obsessed with.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the jazz dance. Ballet, hated it. I realized I hated the structure of ballet. It didn't feel fun to me. And right away, at a very young age, I realized, and nobody told me this, I realized that it was really important that I practice the ballet bar that I was being taught. I realized that it was a structure that I needed in order for all the other styles of dance that I wanted to practice to make them cleaner. And I realized it was a really good discipline for myself, and it was just natural. And, Nana would say to me, "You're so disciplined. Where is this coming from?" And I said to her, I have to.
Mm-hmm.
I can't not.
Mm-hmm.
And you are correct. As a dancer, I became a good dancer because I worked hard and I rehearsed and I practiced in dance class every day, sometimes up to 5 hours a day until my body was so sore. But I wanted to get it into my body. I wanted to become the dance. And so to this day, I can still throw out some of those moves from literally my childhood in the 80s, in the 90s. I still know some of the choreography from the Lisa Lisa and Cult Jam music video that I did. Still know some of that stuff because we just practiced, and I became it. And you just work hard to get clean. Same thing with voice. I trained with Eileen Schauler, who was a Metropolitan Opera mezzo-soprano opera singer, and she had me doing singing opera and operetta. I hated that. I had to sing in Latin. Hated that. But I knew it was really good for my voice. And I just trained and trained and trained, and I practiced all the time. Stuff I could still throw out. I mean, my voice can get a little pitchy, but because I don't train anymore. I haven't trained in many, many years. But I have become the music. I personally really enjoy now just being quiet and listening within for the music to come in. And it doesn't always, but sometimes it does. And my earlier comments, they weren't judgmental. They were an observation. It was literally just an observation of the difference between coming from fully within and tapping into the collective on an energetic level and seeing without and being inspired by that. And as we know, all music today is really just a compilation of so many different styles of music. But there is some music, and all of that music, that is also genuinely channeled by people who have come up with an original sound. I'm so curious. It kind of brings my mind back to like the early classical composers. If there were people of their time who were composing music that inspired them, or like Beethoven was deaf. So that must have been coming from within him, the channeling of the music.
It's a really good question.
I haven't thought about that until now.
I mean, I don't know. I know that his deafness, he wasn't born deaf, he was beaten deaf.
He was beaten deaf by his dad.
So I don't think he was I don't think it was impossible for him to hear. I think that he could still hear some things.
He heard from what he described to people. Everything sound muffled, and he could not distinguish any particular tone from another, which is why when he composed, he had to lay his ear on the piano so he could feel the different frequencies of vibration.
Yeah, that is so interesting.
He talked about vibration. He said the words vibration. The word vibration. He talked about that. I have to feel the vibration, and I feel that there's a change in vibration. And that's how he gets it. And he used everything by feeling what felt good together and what didn't feel good together. And that was how he composed. But he said he could hear the music within his mind.
Yeah.
That was written down. He wrote that.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine, I don't know. I would imagine that it probably did come from within.
Yeah.
But within is still without, you know?
Well, as within, so without.
Exactly.
As below, so above.
Mhm.
Or as above, so below. It's interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah. So now that you had the big release last week,
Mhm.
how do you feel now about your music?
Oh, I don't feel rushed. I don't feel hurried. I don't feel like I have a deadline that I have to reach. I don't feel like I have a marketing plan that I have to execute. I don't feel like I have a goal. I don't really feel like I have, I mean, I have small goals. Like I said, the idea of like just getting good at playing guitar and singing like some of my own songs that I write. Like for that song, I was inspired by an open tuning. So I was like, I found an open tuning and I really liked the sound of it, and I just started kind of playing around. And it's like when we think about inspiration too, it is very, very difficult to say whether or not something is. See, this is why I say nothing can fully ever be original, because you could even be inspired just by a technique. You may not be inspired by somebody else's full complete piece of music. You may just be inspired, like as a musician, by the way somebody plays something. And if they like on a guitar, if they do like a hammer on pull off combination, you might be like, wow, that's really cool. I want to try that. And then you might try like doing that thing, except you might find your own notes that you really like, or you might change the combination of the way your fingers go, and you might change the way that it moves, and you're like, wow, that's a sound I didn't even know could happen. And then you start doing it. And that's kind of like, that's all of my growth with guitar has been motivated by that sort of thing. And that, to me, for me, that's the difference between healthy inspiration and unhealthy inspiration. Unhealthy inspiration drains my energy because it comes from a state of competitiveness, of wanting to succeed in a capitalistic environment. Whereas for me, healthy inspiration is like techniques that I want to include in my own playing, sounds that I find to be very beautiful, things that like incorporating sounds of nature, or like hearing the way somebody does a run a certain way and being like, I want to see if I can do the run that way. Like that to me is healthy inspiration, because that's like, those are just techniques, and then you take those and you put them, and what I find is that I'm very good at combining things into collages. So originality for me comes from taking a lot of the outside world and combining it together in a new way that nobody's ever seen before. And I always find people who tell me, wow, your music is like, I've never really heard anything like that. And to me, I always find that interesting, because I hear all of my influences in my music. But nobody's going to be able to pick that out because they're not me. It's the same with Alejandro Aranda. When I listen to somebody, and I just bring him up a lot because I know he's a musician that we both, know a lot about
He's
at this
amazingly
point.
talented, but he's publicly stated his 3 or 4 main music
And he's got a
inspirations as
lot.
well.
I mean, it's electronic music. If you listen to this guy's, like, what this guy makes and what he plays, like, I can listen to it and be like, oh yeah, I could hear where he pulled this from this artist, or this from this artist, that from that. Like, I can totally hear like the styles that inspired him. But he's not necessarily thinking about it analytically when he's putting it together. He's just thinking, this is really cool, and I want to see what happens when I combine these things.
Mm-hmm.
That's like how that's what art is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I really love making music, and I love playing. I love It's really difficult for me, and this is why I like it. I love the process of getting good at something. Anytime I've ever tackled a musical instrument, it has been the process is a struggle. It's like, well, I guess except for guitar, but guitar was made easier because it was a practice. Like, I was motivated just because of the way it felt in my hands. Like, drums was hard, but the end result is what gets me that motivation, because there's such a powerful feeling that comes from starting something, and you don't know if you're going to get good at it. You really don't. You have no idea if, like, when you start something, you're going to be as good as you want to be in it. It's just starting it and kind of like hoping that throughout practice, you'll eventually get there. And that's really challenging for me. And I like challenge. I put myself in challenging situations all the time. I I feel like that's like probably the only thing that that really gives my life like any fullness or like full sense of meaning, because when I don't do that, I feel stuck, stagnant. And I think this is probably a natural thing for humans. We've evolved through overcoming challenges, but I find music to be, just because it's so beautiful and I love it so much, like it just amazes me to hear others. I love hearing how good other people are, and then I love trying to be good myself. And I remember anytime I've heard like a technique that somebody else has done, like I remember when I was younger, I always wanted to be a good singer. I had no technique. I didn't know I was singing like from my throat, so I would get really tired really easily. Wasn't until years later of just trial and error. Oh, and the other thing is I don't like taking lessons, because to me that just completely destroys the process. When you
It's why I didn't put you in
Mm-hmm.
lessons. I put you in percussion lessons because you asked for it. You
Yep.
wanted to clean up. You never had guitar lessons. You never had voice lessons. I wanted it to come authentically from you.
Yep.
I wanted you to find your own path. And I told you,
Yep.
I want you to find your own path. I said, I have a Broadway programmed mind and a Hollywood programmed mind, and I don't know what my authentic voice actually is anymore. I had it when I was very little, and I don't know what it is, and I don't want you to have to deal with that. I want you to know your authentic voice. Now, I have since found my authentic voice, but it's not something that I feel that I need to share publicly.
Mm-hmm.
I do with the language of light, but that's not literally coming from, I'm not sitting there consciously and just allowing the stream of languaging and tones and clicks and pops to come through. I literally have to go into a meditative state and push the ego up over here and just allow it to come through. And then I just feel everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to put it out there,
Yeah.
because otherwise my programming, my mind will come in and start to dissect it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doing that. That's not its purpose.
Yeah.
That's what authentically comes from within, channeling, truly.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like actual singing a song, my mind will go right away back to all the music that it knows from. Oh, yeah.
See, that was part of the reason why not only did I realized when I was young that I hated taking lessons, because it started with drum lessons because I would never do the homework. And so it was.
No, I actually I held you accountable for practicing drums. You practiced drums every day.
Sometimes I would say that I did, and then I actually didn't.
I was there, so you had to.
Well, no, so here's the thing. So I would play drums, but it was always me just making stuff up or being inspired by something else. I would never do what my teacher told me
Well,
to do.
I already knew that because you told me that. And I said, James and I said, it doesn't matter, because James worked with you quite a bit on this. He said, it doesn't matter if you're not playing what Jesse has asked you to play. He said, just play for the sake of playing. And so that's where you got that from, is we would just say, just play and have fun with it and love it.
When you say practice, what I think of is what it is, that the curriculum that my teacher gave me. But you're right. I did play drums all the time.
You played drums all the time, and we never encouraged you to, you have to do exactly what Jesse tells you to do. And then Russ was your second teacher, right?
Yep.
And I don't think he really gave you that kind of stuff, because you were in a band already with stuff on. Did he?
He would give me stuff, but he was more understanding that I probably wasn't going to do it anyway, because it became very clear to him after a few lessons that I just wasn't interested.
Yeah.
So he let me direct the lessons more.
I remember that. He came up in the kitchen and told me that. And he said, because he's already in a band and he's playing covers, he said, I don't think he's going to do this. And he was the one who said to me, I would like to continue working with him because he's extremely talented. And I said, okay. I said, that's great. I think you guys had a good time, though, you and Russ did.
I really liked Russ.
I know. I liked him, too.
Russ was a good guy, and it was very inspiring for me to see his level of percussion, even if it wasn't in the styles that I was interested in, because because it was more, even then I had an understanding that style is just aesthetic, and to me what was more inspiring was the pure musicianship behind it. And
Yeah.
so to watch his passion, to watch his control, how all of his practice came into fruition when he played, because I think to me really, if we're going to get down to it, the thing that really it makes me love music more than anything else is it's an expression of emotion. And what the reason why I go back to music time and time again is because when I'm playing and when I'm singing, it's like I love the challenge of the techniques, but that's hard. That's not easy for me, and and I get discouraged. And so it's like that's a battle. The part that's not a battle, the part that makes me just keep doing it again and again, is the fact that I feel so deeply when I play and I perform. And one of my challenges that I really desire to overcome is to have that same level of feeling, that pure feeling when I'm playing by myself in front of other people, because I really I get that when I watch other people play. And I hear them talk about all the time how it's like the most freeing thing for themselves to be able to vent in front of people that emotion. And it is a reciprocative feeling. You do become melded with your audience in a way. And for me, I have performed in front of people a lot, but the nervousness can suppress the pure emotion. And there have been moments where I have felt that pure emotion, and it is a powerful and freeing feeling, and so deep. And so part of my musical journey is to really get down to the rawest that I can in front of other people while simultaneously being able to like go through a song. That's where I aim to get to. That's my goal. Um you know, it's not like it's just something that I want to feel. I want to feel that so badly, and it's like I said, it's a challenge, and I so desire to overcome challenge in my life. And I do find that feeling of nervousness goes away the more I practice something, which is why practice is so important for me and for any musician, I find. And I've heard lots of musicians talk about this too. There are a lot of musicians who were very nervous starting out. I've even heard from a lot of musicians that they still get that nervousness before they go out on stage. In fact, I watched a documentary of a musician who I would say he makes music that is very like avant-garde, and he has built an audience of just very avant-garde music. It's just purely him. Obviously inspired by other things. He's inspired by a lot of visual art. That's a lot of where his inspiration comes from, is like street artists, and he'll turn that into music, and he's a visual artist himself. And then obviously his own experiences. He's had a very wild life, and he got sober some years ago, and he used to be just like so messed up on drugs, which a lot of artists do. And he's so honest. It's incredible. In this documentary, before he's about to go on stage, he's like jumping. That they're counting down he's like the opening little music part of his set is playing, and he's about ready to go on stage. He's kind of bouncing, and he's like, this is the worst part. And they're like, what is, he's like, all the nerves, everything. You feel so bad. I feel horrible every time before I'm about to do this. And then he's like, but then I go out on stage and it all goes away in an instant.
Thank you so much to everyone who listened to this week's episode of the podcast. Feel free to check us out on Instagram at One Long Conversation to get some updates on our future episodes, our future content. You can also follow us on Patreon and become a member. We have a lot of interesting and awesome perks and cool ways to connect with us and our community that we're forming there. So go over to Patreon at One Long Conversation, and you'll find us there. We also have these episodes going out on YouTube now. So if you go to YouTube, yet again, at One Long Conversation, you will find video versions of these episodes. So yeah, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.